having me, and thanks, Blair, for the introduction. My family is from Oklahoma, so I've got long, deep-standing Okie roots, mainly in the Lawton area, little small towns. A lot of my work actually was stemmed out of listening to my parents' stories about growing up in these small towns with these great main streets, and getting to know the local butcher, the local baker, and having all of those small town amenities at their disposal. This is kind of what I'm known for in my community, this guerrilla activism, going into my streets and painting bike symbols and sheros and things like that. And it's become official now, but it initially started off as kind of this punk rock mentality of I'm just going to take these streets back to myself because it's taking too long for any endeavors to actually get done. So it all really kind of hit me, though, on what was wrong within my community, specifically whenever my wife and I went to Europe for our honeymoon. And I would sit down in these plazas and see these great, these great water features, these fountains, and these wonderful markets, and these small little businesses, and these. Obviously, this is the what we now call mixed use, but this was just how buildings were made. This timeless way of building that Christopher Alexander talks about. And I would, then we'd go to places up in the north, and we'd see like this grandparents riding bicycles with their grandkids on these cobblestone streets and these great old buildings. And then I would come back to Dallas and wonder, what are we building? What do we have? And I would see our legacy was these kind of things. These were basically, our aqueducts, if you will. This is what's going to stay around for thousands of years. So I thought, with this work, I can't put my grandfather with grandchild on a bicycle anywhere in this equation. I can't set up my little small bakery or shop here. In fact, where I grew up, this is the block, this was the commercial retail center in my neighborhood. I had the little Minyard, the local grocery store, which is now gone. But I had nowhere to put a fountain, nowhere to linger, nowhere to hang out. And this is today's shop. This is pretty much how it looked as well 20 years ago. So in no way is this a timeless form, and it's nothing that really engenders identity in a place that you want to linger and stay. So my first project that I took on, though, to actually try to improve something in my neighborhood, I had this old theater I kept driving past. And I live in the Oak Cliff region of Dallas. Oak Cliff has been considered the bad part of town for years. But my wife and I love the old architecture and the old buildings, and if you guys read Jane Jacobs and things like that, once you start getting into neighborhoods that people perceive are bad, there's more of a sense of neighborliness and more community because people actually look out for each other, and there's a lot more dialogue. So I have this beautiful old theater. Now this theater is actually is infamous. This is where Lee Harvey Oswald was captured. It's on our Jefferson Boulevard. But it had been in disarray, falling apart. You can see the T had been broken up. The sign, the only reason the sign existed was because Oliver North came back and did JFK, and he put a sign up for it. So I thought, well, let's get some friends together and see if I can help do something with this theater, because I passed it for years. So we thought, what can we do in this space? It's all rugged, it's gritty, it's falling apart. We thought, well, why don't we just I'm a musician, and I had a lot of friends that were artists, so I said, let's bring a bunch of artists out and fill up the walls with art that we painted the day before, and we'll hold an auction it the next day and just give the money to some local charity. So I went to the space and we built these easels with some friends. There were about 5 or 6 of us that got together on this, and we spent every bit of money we had. We maxed out our credit cards on this big party we were going to throw. And then right before we were about to open the doors, we thought, what were we thinking? This is a horrible idea because, first of all, it's in Oak Cliff, so it's the bad part of town. It's December, so it's freezing cold. It's a theater that has not been opened in years. But when we opened the doors, we had 700 people show up to the event. And we sold every piece of art on the wall. And what happened afterwards, everybody came out and said, we've been waiting for something to happen in this space. I'm so glad you finally are doing something. And we realized the community was feeling more enabled and more excited about the potential of what was about to occur. So with that, with the success of this project, my friends and I were kind of drunk with enthusiasm. Like, what else can we take on? We need to do something else bold, something big. You guys may know the quote from Daniel Burnham, if you've read Devil in the White City, quotes this, make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood. So my next project I decided to take on, I found this old book about my community. And it showed these old maps of a streetcar line. This is downtown Dallas is up here, this is my community over here. And at the elbows of all these communities were these great little old buildings that were this old classic form, but they had been boarded up and locked up, and because the zoning had been built in such a way around these areas now that it didn't allow these businesses to take off anymore. And the streetcar was pulled out in 1956. So they can no longer utilize that traffic or exist because that traffic that was being brought in from that. So I thought, why don't I try to bring back the streetcar? So I went to some community meetings. I talked to some friends that had been developers in the area, and I said, what do you guys think about this idea? I want to bring the streetcar back. And they said, it's a horrible idea. It's going to be a horrible failure. People talk about it all the time. It's never going to work. It's, just move on. So that night I went home and I started the Oak Cliff Transit Authority. And now this is really funny because if you live, imagine you have this dilapidated, blighted neighborhood. It could be anywhere. It could be somewhere in Oklahoma City. And you decide to say, I'm going to create the whatever neighborhood transit authority. So it looked really official. I had great maps. I mean, the website was really good because I knew how to do websites. Everything looked really official, as you can tell. But this was just me. So the next week, the newspaper put it on the front page of the Metro section. And it says, and there's a funny line here somewhere, it says, Oak Cliff's future could be right on time to a trip to the past. That's what Jason Roberts and other members of the recently formed Oak Cliff Transit Authority are hoping. There were no other members of the But you see my map. They went ahead and took my map and made it look even nicer. So, hold on, let me do that. So, let me go forward. So with that, so this project started building a lot of momentum. We were getting a lot of success within our community. People were getting really excited about that. So while that was going on in parallel, I decided, I thought the Oak Cliff Transit Authority is so successful, and all I did was kind of give this idea a name, and I just put it out there. It was crazy. Why don't I try something else? Why don't I try? I was studying these little cities, and I saw these bicycle things that were happening. So I thought, why don't I start promoting bicycle initiatives as well? Because there were no bike lanes and no bicycling. So I created a group called Bike Friendly Oak Cliff, and we put it out there. We had a blog as well, and we started talking about bicycle infrastructure that we wanted to champion. Because in our city, the only thing that was being reflected for the bicycle community was this Lance Armstrong, kind of this muscular racing, and I guess it's not muscular, this toned, racy, athletic, long distance, sweat-filled kind of bicycling. And I was wondering, where's the beautiful bicycling that I see like in pictures of Europe with the women in dresses and men in suits and riding upright and casually? Ironically, I didn't own a bicycle when I started the Bike Friendly Cliff. I just really wanted this for my community. So I decided to put on a group ride in my community. We didn't have a lot in my community. We were we're considered kind of a bad part of town. We were actually where Lee Harvey Oswald lived. So I thought, how can I take this kind of bad thing and turn this around and just do like a big history ride? So I said, I'm going to throw a history tour ride on my bicycle and follow the trail of Lee Harvey Oswald. Where did he go after the assassination? I thought if I'm lucky, I'll have 20 people because nobody rides bicycles like this upright European-style bicycling in my community. What happened though is I had about 150 people show up, and I did not expect this because I turned the corner. I had to tell everybody to meet downtown, and you imagine when you see, you're new to bicycling, and you have somebody else on bicycle, and you see 150 people sitting there waiting for you. And I was by no means a leader either. So that's another thing too. If you're passionate about something, you're probably going to become a leader, whether you want to or not. So at the front of this, you don't see is me with this frantic looking face, like these people are all following me. I think I know what I'm talking about. So anyways, and that's downtown, of course, and we're all going into Oak Cliff together. Since that time now, there's been bike-friendly groups that have popped up all over our region. It's been so successful that we've actually got our bike plan passed that have been talked about for years. We've got these other bike-friendly Arlington is probably one of the most successful examples of another one that sprung out of this. There's a bike-friendly Auckland, New Zealand too. So it's become international. We do a cyclosomatic event every year, which is our big now bicycle festival. And you can kind of see some of the things we do. We'll have like outdoor biking movies. This is a community that never got out, never played together. And now I do these bike to school week rides where I give kids punch cards. I keep hitting that wrong button, sorry guys. And then we'll do let's see, here we go. We do tweed rides. You can probably see that where everybody dresses up like Mary Poppins from the 1920s. That's really popular. That's this here. This is our Bike to City Hall ride I did. And again, it's really funny because it's the bike-friendly Oak Cliff movement. Again, it's a part of town that people didn't think was going to be the one transforming the city. So with that success, I started thinking about, I fixed buildings, I'm working on streetcars, and I'm getting people to bicycle again. And I got all these old, dilapidated, falling apart buildings in my neighborhood that I want to fix, I want to do something with. And I started thinking about the blocks that I love and the things I love about other communities. And I started thinking about, this outdoor street life with musicians playing outside and these places where seniors and everyone can go and just play chess in the park, and you can buy fruit. You can do cafe seating outside, but I realized that in my community, this was actually, we created ordinances and restrictions against these things. It actually costs $1,000 or more per year to do cafe seating. Fruit stands in the right of way are illegal in Dallas. You can't, it's illegal to have people gather in the streets in my city as well. But there are ordinances that were put in place for 70 years. So I decided, but the thing is, what we were being told was that people didn't walk or didn't hang out in our community because it's too hot, we're car-centric, everybody loves their car here. But I thought, what the real problem is we haven't created the environments that invite people outside. That's the real problem. It's not that we wouldn't champion those things. So I had an old block in my neighborhood. This is an old streetcar stop, one of those elbows that I saw. And these buildings were all over my neighborhood. Because anywhere there was an elbow with a streetcar, these exist. And it happens in every city that had a streetcar, really. My friends had started a little bike shop right here on the corner, but everybody else was boarded up. Nothing was happening in this area. So, and this street in the 70s was turned into a one-way street. They called this a couplet. That was the big thing to do. They thinned those sidewalks, made it high speed, and then if you wanted to open up a little cafe or something here, you would have to have like 8 parking spaces or something like that, which were, there's no way you're going to find parking in this area, because the only way you could create parking was to tear down one of these old brick buildings to make a parking lot. So no business could really take hold in here. So we came in and said, let's create a project where we break as many laws as we possibly can and try to create a great, perfect street. And we had kind of a Martin Luther King moment, and I printed off all the ordinances we were going to break. And we taped them to the windows. So this is one of them. This is Ordinance 43-129, causing crowd to congregate on sidewalk. But I had them for my fruit stand, to set up a fruit stand. I had them for sandwich boards, because sandwich boards aren't allowed, and things like that. Then we opened the street, and we did a big party, and we invited city staff and council and everybody out. And you'll see, here's what it was before. And then it converted to this, where I had 1 lane for traffic, 1 lane for parking. I had a cafe seating. And then in the vacant businesses, I went ahead and worked with the community to create businesses just for the weekend that we felt were missing in the area. Everybody wanted a coffee shop, so I said, let's create a coffee shop. Everybody wanted some places for kids, so we created a kids' art studio. We created a flower and a gift market. We painted this European-style cycle track. It's kind of lumpy because we didn't use a ruler or anything that was proper for this. And we brought in historic lighting, as you can see, in that area. This is people sitting outside. And this is the businesses, again, we created. This is the coffee shop, which was called Philosophia Cafe. This is the kids' art studio. And this is the flower gift market that was created. What happened was this was so successful. I mean, the council members came out and said, we have no idea why we have all these ordinances. This is ridiculous. Why do we do this? So there's been now this act, you can see this was just a year and a half ago. Now there's this act to start pulling away all of those ordinances that we had created 100 years ago that nobody knew why we had ever developed. They probably had a reason 50 years ago, but they weren't rational anymore. Also, another cool thing, this kids' art studio, it's called Oil and Cotton. It's now permanent. It's probably one of the most successful businesses in the area. It offers classes for the kids. It also offers classes for adults. They did a beer brewing class that I missed, but it was really popular. They did bicycle basket weaving, things like that. But they've become a fixture in the 3rd place in our community. And these guys would have never started unless we not given them the chance to test their business out for a couple of days to see if the community wanted it and would champion it. So that was so successful, and we thought, well, if it worked there, will it work somewhere else? I took another streetcar stop, and this is 3 months later. Let's take it when it's hot now, because I'm told now when it's hot, nobody is going to come out. Well, it's 103 degrees on this day. I decided to do another better block project. This is a street that was another streetcar stop area that had been broken up. One section of it in the 50s they put a gas station in that was offset. These were all vacant over here. I had a barren pole with nothing on it for some reason. I had 3 lanes. I had parking. The sidewalk was non-existent over here, and over here it was broken up into a weird form. So I took this block and brought 42 trees and brought 100 bushes and put them in the center of the street. And I built cafe seating. Because I couldn't have the room, so we just built a deck out there so people could sit in the area. on the pole, we just put bikes up there because we thought, let's just create some art and start. We're big fans of like putting our community identity out there. So we'll paint bicycles and put them on this pole. We painted our own crosswalks. We added cafe. This is again cafe seating, and it's a shade. Now the amazing thing is we had about 3,000 people show up this day, and they all stayed and they all lingered too. And so that assumption that people won't linger because it's too hot was blown away. And what we were trying to prove was if we create the environment that's inviting, people will come out. This is a picture I like. It's the trees coming out of the truck. How we got the trees there was these trees were actually planned for a hotel a couple miles away. So we just asked them, like, can you just redirect them to our lot for the weekend? We're having a big party. So we brought those trees out. These 15-foot trees. Another cool thing we did too, we built a blade sign. Those are illegal on our street too. So let's go ahead and just, we try to break as many rules as possible to show why we have a problem. So it's civil disobedience, but for good. At least we say that. And then this is another one of the businesses that has become permanent. So somebody made a food cart for one of the projects, and now it's become a local popular hotspot called a Hot Box. Okay, so that was 2 examples of these better block projects I've done. So part of this process I was learning was the key was to get away from this long-term planning. We always talk about plans and planning, and what happens is the planning process is so long, and it's usually championed by somebody at the political leadership level or somebody at the civic leadership level. And by the time the plan finally gets momentum and gets energy and gets funded, oftentimes the political leadership has changed, or the civic leadership has changed, and then the plan is finished and it's 3 years later. And then at that point, they need to do a financing campaign or a campaign in order to raise money or a bond package or something to actually implement the plan. And at that point, there's no more momentum whatsoever, and then new plans get created, and you start the cycle all over again. So our shelves were filled with hundreds of plans. So I had another example of this process where this group wanted to do a dog park in my neighborhood. And they said, you know, we've been working on this for about a year. We've created this team that's going to really promote dog parks. And we've been meeting, but we're a little frustrated because we're doing fundraisers. The city tells us we need to have a 60-acre lot to do a dog park. I'm sorry, 6-acre lot to do a dog park on, and a bunch of random things. And they asked me and our team, like, what would you guys do? And we're sitting across the street from this area, and I said, well, why don't we make that area across the street a dog park? This is a dumping zone. This is a dumping zone on a tree, and this is an overgrown tree, and it's an overgrown lot with trash everywhere. And they said, okay, well that's great. I guess we'll have a meeting, we'll have a fundraising campaign, and maybe what do you think in like 3 or 4 months we'll get it off the ground? And I said, well, why don't we do it on Saturday? So we did. And we built the park on Saturday. We just went ahead and mowed it ourselves. We brought some mulch out, mulched around the area. The beauty of these projects is we borrow things to get things done because they're temporary. And the cool thing about borrowing is that borrowing, I found now, is so key in order to enabling community. And if you think about it, like if you need to make cookies at your house and you're out of sugar, you go next door to this neighbor that maybe you didn't know too well before and say, you feel helpless, and like, I'm sorry, but I'm out of sugar, can I borrow some? And they say, yes, you start this little dialogue, you go back home, you make the cookies, and then of course what you do afterwards, you share them with your neighbor. So that process happens on these better blocks every time. I go and say, I need some trees, I'm helpless, can you help me? Like, yeah, I got some trees, it's only for 2 days. Like, okay, that's fine. We bring them in place, and then we take them, and we create this great environment for a couple of days, and then we pull it out. And people in our community have now become the champions for these things that I had been reading about and talking about, urban planning and all this walkability and urbanism. But the average Joe or Jane didn't know what those things meant, but they know what things feel like. So when you put them in the space, they're like, I didn't know what you were talking about, but I know I love this street. And the cool thing is, too, when we take it out, like that one with all the trees we did, this one here, I literally have people that bring their friends back the next weekend because they're like, I got to show you this cool place. And they drive back and they're like, it's here. I swear it was right here. What's happened though, it's kind of cool from this project, is that about a year later, you start seeing a lot of things catalyzed in the community, and now we've had businesses become permanent throughout this area. This has become a really popular area. This street was owned by TxDOT, which is our Texas Department of Transportation. The city was able to take it back from TxDOT and make it a city-owned street so we can actually start making these improvements permanent. That would not have happened had I not just gone and taken over myself with our team. Or it could have, but it would have been a 10-year process, and we would have had a champion. We had to find the champion that would have gone through the whole 10-year process again. So those three projects were so popular, I thought, let's take another blighted, horrible place. What's the worst place in our city that just feels so cold and soulless? And I realized it was City Hall. And it was right in front of it. This pond does not work, by the way. It's constantly got somebody cleaning up every day, but you can't go near it, you can't play in it, you can't do anything with it. And it's got these stumps here, very little vegetation around the area. But the city in '83 hired William White, famous William White, to come out and do a plan for the plaza to fix it. This is a plaza that's twice the size of San Marco Square in Venice, Italy. But it's got 1,500 employees inside, but nobody comes outside. Nobody uses this space. It's hot, it's bare, and there's nothing to do there. He made some simple suggestions like bring out seating, bring out shade, bring out a pavilion where people could actually buy food, and things like that. And it's relatively inexpensive, but the city looked at this and thought, yeah, I don't know if we want to go this route. This is probably too much for us to spend at this time, and nobody at this time was '83, so there was this move away from the inner city. So I found this old plan and got some friends together and said, hey, why don't we build his plan? We can probably pull this off in 2 or 3 weeks. And sure enough, we did. We built our own chairs out of pallets. This is pallet awnings that we made and things that we use a lot of reclaimed materials. This was council members that are playing frisbee outside because everyone started coming outside after we started making it more humane. We brought big chess sets for kids, and kids came out. This is all the people that were usually inside the building that never came out. They're all outside now. We made checkerboards out of the stumps that were the horrible seating, and then we put movable seating in instead. And this was a crepe stand. The cool thing from this project is it's been so successful that the city now is going in and they've putting this container up every month, and they're using it as a business. We gave them some suggestions on what they could do to keep it going. We said, make this a business innovation zone and an incubator for business. So they bring out folks that are starting their new restaurants or new businesses to test out their ideas with a captive audience of 1,500 people that are right next door. So it's been a way that the city can act as an enabler as opposed to being the policeman that they've become over these years of all the ordinances and rules we put in place. So our next project, we've taken on these things. Now my next one is this is one that we're really excited about, and it's going to be pretty tricky. This is the problem that we're seeing now throughout the suburbs. Are these things? This is Sac and Save, which is now gone. There was a fire, and so now you have low quality retail that's taken over in this one section where you have a lot of dollar stores and things like that. So the perception of the area is starting to change. The middle folks with disposable income are leaving. You're starting to see this this rapid kind of move away, and so pretty much everyone has given up on the space. And of course, I was focusing on urbanism and city issues, but I realized these are real problems because I've got neighborhoods around here and they need great places and places that matter. So right now, we are building out, we're trying to build a city inside the parking lot with small retail opportunities for people. We're working with a UTA right now. We're taking that gas station, we're taking shipping containers that we're lining up in the street, and we're going to line them all the way up into the building itself to create an indoor and outdoor market with outdoor spaces. We've already started this is our first containers. My teammate Andrew, who was painting the crosswalks earlier. But alongside this, we create events in the area because programming is key to make these places work. You've got to have something that brings the people out and has them playing together. And events don't make money, but they keep life in the space. So we just started bringing out like containers so kids could go fishing because we found that we're trying to figure out what are activities that are good for 80-year-olds. And fishing was that perfect thing where the grandparent and grandchild could do something together. And this is a kid that probably thinks like, why in the world am I catching catfish in the middle of a parking lot? We realized that all these plazas in Europe had fountains, so we started building our own. But we make them inexpensively. That's a horse trough. That's a garbage can that's upside down, and then we poke holes in it, and we just put a pump up in it. And you can kind of see in the background there. Works really well. Kids go right to it. It's a water feature. So I'll return to the kind of the streetcar story. So I did the streetcar project, and it was a website. You kind of saw where that was going and what was happening with that. And I had my little ragtag team of 4 or 5 of my friends that had this project. And we're saying, hey, we're going to bring the streetcar back. And you know, we're talking to the city of Dallas, and we're going to do this, and they're like, yeah, right, whatever, Oak Cliff, okay. So we decided to meet with officials in Portland, and we started filling out our own grants. And said, we're going to go apply for this. So we met with COG, our community, our council of governments, and say, hey, I think we've got a good application. Let's try for this. And they're like, they went ahead and signed up for us. Like, all right, you guys did all the work, whatever. We had a 3% chance of getting any money for this grant. And remember, it's the bad part of town. We're trying to bring a streetcar back. In 2010, we won a $23 million grant to return the streetcar to Oak Cliff. All because I built a website. That's all I did. So to wrap up, just want to kind of talk to you what I do and how I get things done. So because people ask me, how do you get all this stuff done? Because we've done this in a relatively short amount of time. We're getting bike infrastructure, and streetcars, and fixing our bad blocks. The first thing I tell everybody is show up. Show up to those town halls, show up to those city hall meetings, show up, because if you don't show up, she will, or her friends, or if they don't want anything to happen. So we're up there to balance them out. They win. So it's key to show up, and what happens is, they know, they see you at the first meeting, and they're like, okay, you're going to show up to 3 meetings, and then you're going to be out. And they expect you to be gone. So that's why you got to keep going. You got to be like, yeah, I'm still here, I'm not leaving yet. So at that point, they start listening to you, like, okay, you're showing up, so we got to take you seriously. The next thing I tell people is, with your project, give it a name. Give it something they can identify with, so people can feel like it's something that they can take hold of, and it creates a sense of place, sense of belonging. It's the first thing that happens when you're born. You're given a name. So what we do is we've got our art conspiracy, which is that art project. Now it's been going on for 6 years. We've raised over $100,000 for local charities. It's been really popular. This is my OCTA group, my Oak Cliff Transit Authority group. This is a little neighborhood now that's doing really well in my neighborhood called Bishop Arts District. It was just the property owner at the time, 20 years ago, said, I'm just going to call this the Bishop Arts District. It's the smartest thing the guy could have ever done. Because now there's Bishop Arts District t-shirts, and there's this whole identity that everybody associates with the area. And the success of this little block, this is just a block of buildings, but the ripple effects on the perception of safety for miles, and the ripple effects on the home sales and economics in our area, this little block is enormous. It's all because it's got a name. And lastly, and this is the key to get things done, set a date and publish it. Commit yourself to something. And do it on a short term. What I do with my Better Block projects, I usually give them about 2 months. And I put it out there, and whenever I put it out there with a poster and all, I probably only have 10% of the work done. But we jokingly with our team say we blackmail ourselves. We have to blackmail ourselves to get things done. So it's out there in the press, and then it's like, oh great, we have to do this because we put it out there now. So there's no backing out at that point. We kind of put ourselves back against the wall, so we have to produce something. And that's where you start getting really creative with your resources, and you start finding things like, because all cities have problems with not having enough money and scale and things like that, but what you do have as a community is social capital. You have a community, and when you start connecting everybody together and you are helpless, and you're saying, I got 2 months, I gotta get this done, please help me, and you start getting everybody on the hook with you, people will amaze you. And they'll help you get to the finish line. They'll help you create something amazing. And you'll borrow, and you'll talk, and then the dialogue starts, and then the community starts back again. And then lastly, this is kind of, you guys have probably all read this quote. It's very pertinent to me in my group, but never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens could change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. This is oh so true. I brought a streetcar back with it. I got bike lanes, and we're changing blocks. You guys have that exact same opportunity anywhere you can think of. If you just decide to carry an idea, give it a name, give it a date, and set to making major change.